Hello and welcome to Geek on My Sleeve. If you're new to the channel, I'm your host Peter, and at Geek on My Sleeve, we do spoiler free book reviews, live book discussions. For this review, I have John with me, and we are going to be doing a spoiler free book review of Dungeon Calamity Book 3 of the Divine Dungeon series by Dakota Krout, narrated by Vikas Adam. This is going to count towards our 52 book challenge. And now we're going to go to John for our Goodreads.
Dungeon Calamity. Powerful necromancers are on the move, and Cal is caught in the crossfire. Without his faithful wisp, Danny, Cal's mind slips, and he begins creating traps and monsters that go against his already loose morals. After a direct threat from the unexpected force causes Cal's mind to stabilize, he throws all of his resources into keeping his thoughts clear while he funds searches for his lost companion. When others fail against him, and again, Cal decides to take matters into his own hands. Deadly occurrences remind Dale that no matter how well he does in his small community, he is still considered a weakling in the greater world. Though he continues his physical and mental training, he decides to gain strength by any means necessary, even if these decisions are killing him.
First off, this book is amazing. If you're already, this far in the Divine Dungeon series, there's more. So I'd highly recommend continuing it.
I don't want to say the third book of Lord of the Rings. I would say this is very similar to the second one. Still a great movie, great book, obviously, as well. I feel as though this is like a lot of battles take place, a lot of character development. There's definitely more to come in the book series. So there's definitely like that huge battle at Rohan, battle at the castle. I feel as though this book very similarly captures certain aspects of that and comes across as not only action packed, but as a good sense of friendship and love. I feel as though Dakota hit it right on the mark for those two aspects there.
I forgot to mention at the beginning here, we are assuming that you have read the first book and the second book in the series, so minor spoilers ahead for books 1 and 2. We are not going to spoil 3. The way we leave off in 2, we lose Danny. And it's interesting because the writing style for 3 for me takes kind of a unique twist. At first, I was a little like, what's going on here? The nature of the book, it makes a lot of sense. There are several different elements. In 1 and 2, we have a couple perspective hops, not really time hops, where we see it from the dungeon's perspective, and then we go through and we see it from the adventurer's perspective. In 3, it's a lot harder to distinguish where the time hops are happening. We can tell there are time hops, but it's not as, cut and paste or black and white with it all.
The writing style didn't really seem to impact how I pictured the book as I continued reading, or in this case, listening to. Though the beginning was kind of confusing, at least for me, as I tried getting back into the groove of, like listening to while I was doing other things. And then once I got into the story and started like, oh, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. There were a couple parts where like, all right, I didn't understand what was going on. Let me re-listen or reread what just happened there. There were quite a few parts for that for me.
Dakota does well building up to a climax. For this one, it adds a level of readability. Things just come together. I know we're talking, you haven't even read it yet, but
I think what Pete's trying to say is that by the time you are finished reading the third book, you're going to be captivated into wanting to go ahead and reread back all the way to the first book and like catch those nuances that you may or may not have. Let's just say Witcher games. If you've ever played Witcher games or read the books or whatever, if you played just the third game, which is Wild Hunt, which in all honesty is probably their best Witcher game so far, and you see all their characters, you're like, okay, this is who this is. This is Ciri, everything. But if you played the first and second game, you can get all the quotes that people are like, all the characters are saying, and all the like, you catch some background characters that you may or may not have, some Easter eggs that you may or may not have caught because you've already played or read the first two.
Okay.
So,
Yeah, the subtle nuances that just add more to the development of the book.
the third book definitely had that type of vibe for me. And then, of course, like extra character development,
Yeah,
a
our
few of
main
them.
group. And then also we get a lot of character development for everyone in the town or Mountaindale. Trying not to spoil it there.
All right, yeah. I think what Pete's trying to say there was you get to see a lot more of the council and a lot of characters that you probably like you knew of, but you never really cared about. Like you get a lot more character development for them as well.
Yeah, and also I guess in a different element because you get to see select people in certain elements, but then you also get to see them, with a little more combat flavoring, with a little more prior life flavoring.
I would definitely agree with you there. And you get to introduce into new races that was not mentioned before in the first two books, but you definitely like you already know about the dwarves and the dark elves. Now there's going to be a few more that come into play. And I feel as though when characters are introduced, Dakota does a really good job just explaining what they're going through.
Power scaling potential. Like, even though we feel all of our main characters from book 1 to book 2 have progressed and they're growing, in book 3, they progress and grow even more. Then we get a glimpse of the real world and how woefully underprepared we really are.
Yeah, some messages that Dakota's trying to send through his book, like a
Yeah,
life message.
life lessons throughout the book.
Yeah. And I feel as though if you really like action, the third book here has a couple fights that really bring out and describe how things are fought over, and just describes general action really well. And then, of course, they introduce necromancers. Well, they finally introduced, because we've only really been reading or hearing about them in the prologue, like they're in the background scenes. This book really brings them forward, and you find out just a little bit more about what they're about. And of course, like different rankings, how dangerous they really are, kind of deal. And then on the flip side, you can also find out about new characters that are specifically not designed to go against them, but just who's there to protect your common man or woman. A lot of new characters introduced in this book. A lot of new races. A lot of like the bad guys are finally introduced, kind of deal. And then, of course, we get to find out more about Cal and, what kind of challenges he faces when trying to locate and try and get back Danny. I feel as though he has a lot of challenges that he goes through. And then, of course, Dale has a lot of challenges as well, even though he is still considered a weakling.
As far as Dale's concerned, you can only progress so fast, and I think it brings it all back to life lessons where you can't do everything yourself. You can only do the best you can, but having someone or something to really drive you forward.
Special someone continue to drive you forward really helps bring out the best in people, and at the same time continue the motivation to continue doing what you do.
So, final thoughts on the book. It is a great book. If you're already, read 1 and 2, you should definitely continue. It's got a kind of a unique flavor, in my opinion, versus 1 and 2. Similar progression structure, but kind of doing different things. If you haven't already, please like and subscribe, and we hope to geek out with you soon. Bye.
Bye.